Max, I want to start with you. What do you make of Trump's tweets?
First, I want to say there was a very good article, and I thought made a lot of good points in the National Review by Ryan Huber that talked about like why people want sports shows to stick to sports. And I'm sympathetic to a lot of those points, and I understand. However, this is in the news. It relates to sports, and we're going to talk about it right now. First, let me say that Jason Kander is a great follow on Twitter. I recommend him. Has the quote that he has that he's pinned on his account is, "Patriotism is not about making everyone stand for the flag. Patriotism is about making a country where everyone wants to." That's his quote. And I think that that when you want to make everyone stand for the flag, that's not patriotism. That's a form of nationalism, which is inferior, dangerous, and bad. I don't know if I could be more clear about that. And I want to say that we know that the NFL, the protests in the NFL break down along racial lines. There are plenty of African-American people who like standing for the anthem and enjoy that ceremony and are against the players sitting, as there are some white people who are for the protests. And, you know, I'm not saying it's unanimous, obviously, but it does break down along racial lines. Black people tend to, by a larger percentage, support the protesters, and white people support the idea of everyone standing or against the protesters. That same racial divide mirrors Trump supporters. Trump won. People talk about economic anxiety and this and that. No, Trump won. It broke down along racial lines. White people of every demographic, of every age group, of every income level voted for Trump. I mean, it's similar to the protests. So what do I make of this? I think, first of all, these kind of emotive issues, these kind of issues that make people feel things, animate Trump. He seems to be animated by those things, number one. Number two, if you want to take the more cynical view, and maybe these two things dovetail, it plays to his base, which are the same people who don't like the protests. And he has us talking about it again, because as Stephen A., we discussed yesterday, if the president of the United States is going to tweet about sports, is it our job to use our editorial discretion and say, well, we're not going to take the bait, we're going to leave it alone? Or do we have to deal with it? And we've come to the conclusion that we have to deal with it. So those are my thoughts.
It ain't that complicated. The man is being petty. He's being vindictive. And folks that don't want to say that about the president, fine, I'll do it for y'all. This is a vendetta that this man continues to exercise against the National Football League. I have spoken to owners, I have spoken to executives, even to some players who adamantly agree with that position. He did not get to own a team in the 80s after suing the league for the USFL. He did not get to own the Buffalo Bills in 2014 like he was in pursuit of. As I've stated on many occasions, I was on the phone with Donald Trump before he became a candidate for the presidency of the United States, talking about this very subject. He wanted to own the Buffalo Bills, and he wanted to basically have the narrative I deduced from our conversation. He wanted to make sure everybody understood he was interested in keeping the team in Buffalo, where the prospective owners at the time were contemplating moving the team out of Buffalo. So that was his pitch in order to gain ownership of the Buffalo Bills. It did not work. Several owners spoke out against including him into that good old boys club. Obviously, Commissioner Roger Goodell is somebody he perceived to be one of those individuals, and everything about this man's history, everything about this man, how he currently is, speaks to his willingness to be vindictive and to exact retribution against those who speak out against him or alter or get in the way of his goals. And this is the biggest thing that everyone needs to understand. I'm not giving you emotion here. I'm giving you facts. I told you I spoke to him. I told you I spoke to owners. Told you I spoke to executives. And I'm going to give you one more tidbit. If the NFL owners and Commissioner Goodell have facilitated Donald Trump becoming an owner of the Buffalo Bills, he never would have run for president. He decided to run for the presidency of the United States of America after he was denied the opportunity to own the Buffalo Bills. So, whether you think it's comical or maybe it allows you to contribute to the disgust that you may have for owners in the NFL, if you want to know who's primarily responsible for him being the president of the United States, Max, Coach, it may not be the 60 million plus people who voted for him. It might be the owners who coaxed him into running for the presidency in the first place because they wouldn't let him in the NFL. That's what this is about.